Good welcome to paint video one of many, I think. Okay, let's just talk a little bit about paint prep, paint system, and then we'll talk about references, scheme, etc. Okay, so we've got basically this model is in sub-assemblies. It is the easiest way to paint some models, depending on a couple of factors. Personally, I really like it when a tank is only in two pieces, like a turret and the hull and everything pre-assembled. However, this particular model, no side skirt, so we've got an area to deal with in there, and that it makes it easier for us if we paint all these road wheels separately. It makes the process longer, of course. It's just one of those things, and of course we've got individual track links as well to deal with. So in this case, we've just got lots and lots of individual paint sub-assemblies. I'm just going to give you some tips here basically on paint prep. I've seen this a bunch of weirdos that actually try and wash their sprues prior to assembly. I have no idea why they would do that. But if you're interested in removing the grease and any sort of contaminants off the surface, you can get painter's tack cloths, or alternatively, Corona times, get some antibacterial alcohol-based wipes, and that way you can remove any surface contaminants from the model. That's one factor. The other factor is dust, and the easiest way to remove dust is, well, first of all, rubbing using a cloth, but the quickest and most effective way is using your airbrush and blowing air at a higher pressure to remove any dust that may or may not be on the surface of the model. Okay, let's talk briefly about paint system now. Okay, so we're using a sort of typical, well, my philosophy of sort of mixing things up a bit, but I'm going back to my favored paint systems, and specifically a paint system. We're going to be using the Mr. Hobby and Mr. Color products, the lacquer products as well. These aren't acrylics whatsoever. They aren't healthy. They're not. They have got very strong odors, but also they are really excellent paints for coverage, for durability, and also for finesse when it comes to airbrushing. So previous video, you've probably seen me use the surfaces before. These are the surfaces in the bottles that you would mix with leveling thinner or lacquer thinners and can be airbrushed on. And I thought instead we'll actually use the spray can version. This is 1500. 1500 is actually the grain of it, how fine this is. So 1000 is a little bit less fine. Well, that's sort of debatable because you can dilute these down, so you can make these. The advantage of the bottled ones is that you can dilute them to your taste. You can make them as fine or otherwise as you wish. But 1500 is the spray can spray paint version. Advantages of this, obviously spray can, you go straight into it, really easy to use, easy to apply. Disadvantages, of course, the main one is the price. These are very expensive, and you're going to get a lot more out of your bottles of surfacer than you ever will out of these cans. However, obviously for convenience and also really just to show you how these work, let's use these. There's other surfaces, but we don't really need to speak about them too much. Paints are going to be Mr. Color, but we'll talk about them in a little bit more depth in a minute or two. So, application of Mr. Surfacer Primer. Why and how? Okay, first of all, this vehicle. When we use Mr. Color paints, we don't really need a primer. We don't need a primer, and also with the Tamayas as well. They've got enough bite that they'll adhere perfectly well to the plastic surface. So why would I even bother to use this? Well, I've got photo etch on here, and really more to do with the photo etch is getting depth underneath the photo etch components. So I want to make sure that I've got enough. Basically, I eliminate any traces of the brass parts and of any remnants of any light colored plastic that might be underneath. Also, we've got these areas here, the scratch areas that we built up. So instead of, actually I'm going to try and do this as a variation. We're going to apply this surfacer primer in a controlled manner as best as I can. A little bit difficult, that's why we use airbrushes typically. But instead of coating every single component in black primer, instead I'm just going to try and hit certain areas. That way I'll conserve the use of this and also be able to demonstrate maybe some random type shading. So let's get on with that. We'll get on with the application of the surfacer primer right now. Okay, we're ready to spray. Most important thing is to get these at high pressure, which means lots and lots of agitation, or if you want to take a quick shortcut, plunge it into some very hot water, not boiling water, but very hot water. Leave it in there a couple of minutes. The can itself will get hot. Of course, that creates pressure, and we'll get this coming out at a very high volume. Now, application as well with all spray paints is basically the same. You need to move the can rapidly. Let's start somewhere discreet first of all. Just make sure everything works as it should. And you can see it's quite wet. And it actually looks thick, no problem at all. That's the beauty of this primer. You can actually see that it's going to go absolutely perfectly level later on, so I'll prove that point here. You can see it's so fast to do this, and probably that is the biggest advantage. Let's try and get a bit more depth. You can see inside those grills, we're going to hit that from two different angles. One from there and another one from there. That will do for now. We're best off going in with the airbrush to hit details like that. Of course, if we hit things with too much paint, then we will end up with thick runs of paint. It will look ugly, nasty, etc. So let's get all these brass parts sprayed now. The other areas I want to look into are anything that's in recess as well in particular. So on this model, not too bad. There's some areas. Let's just hit inside here. Now you can see there's dust in that portion, so I haven't really covered it. I thought I might be able to control this better, but it really is too difficult with spray cans to sort of get any, you know, to try and differentiate between different areas. Now I'm going to have to be particularly careful around these areas. There's components I'm going to have to remove as well, like those light guards, but let's get some depth into that just to start off with. And also I want to get underneath there. And see how quick this is. Okay, now we're going to leave that. Dries very quickly. Then we'll have a look in a second. Launcher, again, this has got different areas. Remember, we made this actual function so it'll be easier to paint. Articulate all the way back. Be careful how you handle it. Don't want to snap off all those little details. Let's get this entirely coated just to make sure we get all that depth inside there. I think particular underneath is the main areas I'm concerned about. And of course we've got those that brass photo etch is getting covered up as well. course, the other thing with spray cans are they're quite wasteful as well. There's a lot of spray that's overshooting the model. You've got no control of pressure whatsoever. It's determined by that can, and you need to spray it high pressure because the nozzle's very big. But at the same time, advantages are very, very quick coverage. This Surfacer primer is really an excellent spray paint. Highly recommend it. The other one as well I recommend is the Tamiya fine surfaces. Those are great as well. Those are the most noxious ones. I heard that there's some acrylic versions on the market recently, but not too sure how they perform. And the other one is automotive primer as well. Not the really thick stuff, the more fine stuff as well will do an excellent job if you need to cover up large areas. So let's just let this dry out and see how it looks. So as you can see, yeah, very quick, got very stinky as well. Fumes are building up inside here right now. Make sure you've got plenty of ventilation, and really you need a mask on when you're spraying this stuff. Extremely harmful, flammable, etc. But we know all that shit anyways, okay. Anyways, okay, what have I proved here? I proved that you can't basically control these primers, yeah. No matter, the idea was just to sort of shade in areas where I needed the primer basically on the metallic components, and also in depth areas sort of underneath. But because it's just too difficult to control, that's the massive disadvantage of these primers. So if you want control, airbrush. If you want speed, get the cans. A lot of money. They are pretty good, I tell you. I mean, especially on aircraft, you know, where you've got that nice flat surface. You just hit everything in one go. You can do things very quickly with these spray cans, and of course it is an excellent primer as well. But anyways, let's talk about references before we go on to the next stage. But I'll just show you how everything's looking. You can see how smoothly the primer dries. It's a very nice thin coat, none of the details lost, which of course is our most important thing with our scale models. We don't lose detail. We don't want everything obscured by paint jobs that are poorly executed. But yeah, let's talk about references now. Okay, so we're looking at some pictures now of Krug. Okay, remember this is 1960s, 70s rocket system in Warsaw Pact usage. Trying to find, you can find period photographs, most of them will be in black and white, and you'll see that the vehicle was kept in pretty pristine condition during its operational life. Now, that doesn't interest me too much. I'm looking for something that is going to attract the viewer, and it also is going to be a bit of a challenge to paint. So I found a few references here, and something in common with all these are obviously deactivated vehicles, some of them being left basically to rot to some extent, as you can see. So the paint's peeling. Now, they make attractive subjects in their own right. However, I've sort of honed in on a couple of different examples here. Now, these are vehicles that are used, I think, for display purposes. The most current one I could find is this Polish Army one that shows it sort of, it looks like very good colour photographs, probably just prior to its retirement. And these examples, I believe, are being used by a museum, and they still operate the vehicle. So the actual vehicle I'm going to depict isn't a military used vehicle. We're going to sort of show it in a post-Cold War state, modern day, being used by one of these museums. And the camouflage seems to be a little bit based on this plate that I found. There was a disruptive pattern that was applied to Soviet vehicles in that Cold War state, but I couldn't find any photographs of it operationally. So I've honed in on this photograph in particular. I think it's a HDR photograph, which obviously brings these colours a little bit brighter and more vivid than they would be in the actual vehicle. and I found maybe 2 others that I'm going to combine. So it's going to be a combination of these references. Now we'll talk about the painting, and the one thing that's going to be in common obviously is that in terms of this vehicle, the one I've honed in on is that there's lots of, first of all, there's the details. I think I mentioned in the build video that a lot of the actual items of equipment, like the Pioneer tools, are missing from the vehicle, so I wanted to depict that as well. But the paint will have been based, everything will have been based on a dark Russian green, and then the camouflage will be applied on top. So we'll follow that through on our painting philosophy, which is exactly what we're going to cover now. Okay, so now we know the subject. Let's talk about how we're going to achieve that. And I've alluded to it before. What we're going to do is paint the vehicle as it was in reality. So the main components, the chassis, the launcher, etc. Overall application of this color, Russian green 2 from Mr. Color, or you can just use a dark green. They're very similar, this Russian green sort of myth, you know. Anyways, very nice color to use. Okay, we're going to dilute that with the leveling thinner, about 50%. And because everything will get noisy, I'm going to use the big airbrush. I'm going to use the big boy, so I can get a lot of coverage. Now, the way I'm going to paint this is, because we sort of failed in our attempt to just sort of selectively cover parts of the vehicle, I'm going to try and keep shade underneath certain areas, so I won't go for 100% coverage. Then, after that is paint's cured, we're going back and re-examine it, and then I'll explain to you the next stage. Other stuff we need to do, we need to paint lots of accessories. I've lined up as many as I can on some of these sticks, got all the drive sprockets, idlers, and let's not forget about the photo-etched grill as well that needs to be added onto that component. Using the airbrush we can get a bit of depth and colour these in the right colour. So yeah, I'll get on with the airbrushing. You can look at that. Okay, most of the base coating's done. It's difficult to get coverage. There's so many nooks and crannies using quite a lot of paint. But I've got a bit of more of a dilute mixture. I'm just going to do overall applications now. Just try and make sure you hit every angle. That is the thing, especially with all these detailed parts. You can see there's a bit of shade on this now. You see some dark areas, light areas. However, the majority will be going light because we're going for a depiction of wear and tear. So shade will be in natural areas, and the weathering is going to take care of shading for us. Yeah, you really need to get into every single angle if you want to get coverage. Still need green under this area. Remember, all that area underneath the side skirt is exposed. Look at that, you see, easy to miss areas. Sometimes you need to crank up some pressure. I'm spraying about 30 psi, which is high pressure really, because I need to get into these detailed areas. If I'm on a low psi, I just won't be able to shoot deep into these areas, and I'll have too much shade there. Won't matter too much in areas that aren't visible, but if I've got areas that are visible, it's going to affect the overall look. But if you shoot deep and you're shooting at high pressure, back off real quick. So hit an area and leave. Don't concentrate. Don't let that brush stay on target too long. Keep moving it. Okay. Base coat works complete. It took a lot of paint. I'm talking about 3/4 of a bottle of this Russian green. Mainly just because there's so much depth to get into this model, particularly around the launcher, as I mentioned. So yeah, with the base coat done, the big work's sort of complete now, and we can move on to the next stages. I like this approach of getting as much coverage as possible. That way it just tends to make everything else just a little bit easier, as I'll explain as we go on. Okay, so the base coat's had time to dry. Just give you a quick tip here. Inspect your paint afterwards. Most likely you might have a few imperfections. And by that I mean just like little pieces of dust. Quick tip, just get some paper, just plain paper, and you can actually polish the paint. Mr. Colour paint is satin type appearance, but in some areas you might just get little pieces of dust, so you can just give it a little polish. You can usually knock off any dust, and also anywhere where you haven't got a perfectly smooth surface, not that it's entirely necessary, you can basically polish it back. You see the paint that's coming off on that? That is the finest grade sandpaper you can get, is just paper. So anyways, yeah, you'll do that. Next stage, I'm gonna have to explain it. First things first, we're gonna use a smaller airbrush. We need to have a bit more control for this next stage. So I'm using a 0.3. Now, instead of getting all locked up on all the terminology that all these modelers use, it's all confusing, let me just put your minds at rest. First of all, we're not doing modulation. That is not the technique that we're going to go into. We might do that in another video, but I don't really follow that technique. What we're going to do is, based on our references, we know that the vehicle isn't in the best condition. This paint looks pretty good at the moment, and there's more colours to go on that are going to be the camo. Now what I'm going to use Russian Green 1, which is a little bit of a sick looking colour, to be honest, especially when you compare it to what we started off with, this very, you know, wholesome Russian Green 2. This is a much more lighter blend of colour, and therefore we're going to use it very sparingly. We're going to dilute it rough ratio, 70% thinner to about 30% paint, and we're going to use very low pressure. And the idea is we're going to add areas of lighter patches on the paintwork on exposed areas. Not going to try and do it everywhere. We're certainly going to leave all that area dark. Don't need to worry about that. We're going to try and hit random areas. Why? Why are we going to do that? We're going to give it the impression that the paint is a little bit worn down. So actually, by using this lighter paint, we're actually starting our weathering. We're starting the base of the weathering. So I'll get on with that now. Because of the noisy compressor, we'll just hear some music for a little while. Okay, that's been left to dry now. You can see it's sort of subtle, anyways, sort of get the idea. Discolored paintwork, that's all that we need to do. Now we need to do those camo colors, so let's go on with that. Okay, so we're about to apply the first camouflage color, masking hard edge, using the sort of this science putty stuff that you've seen in my other videos. No problem about that. Struggled really to find the right color for that intermediate camouflage color. The problem is that my references are in like the HDR colors, so they aren't accurate and they're, you know, exaggerated. What I did some research, and I think this color here, it's called 6K, which is like a World War II Soviet color. It's like a teal, and I did some color matching and everything, just trying to find what came close. This was the closest I could get, so it's like a light brown. And then to turn that into an equivalency Mr. Color, I'm just going to go with this sand yellow. I think I'll do a test spray underneath, see what that looks like, see if I'm happy with it, and then go for it from there. So let's power on through this and get this camo on. Okay, now saving grace is that these camouflage colours don't need to be perfect. They seem sort of hastily applied, so let's just sort of see what they look like after the mask and see if we need to do any tidy up. I thought the colour looks okay actually, better than what I expected. I was really concerned about getting the correct camouflage colour, or one that looks right. Of course the last colour is very simple, but yeah, I'll continue to mask this and we'll get on with the final camouflage colour. Okay, we'll start off with the final camouflage colour. The indications are black. I say it's very dark grey. NATO black will be a great combination. It will fit in with the theme of the vehicle. I think it's right as well. So we'll get on with that. Fortunately, a little bit easier. I'm going to have to freehand a little bit. So let's go on with this painting job. Okay, masking removed. There we are. Camo's basically finished. One thing I forgot to answer, of course, was obviously I've only got one profile side of the vehicle. So how do I know what the other side looks like? Of course, I don't know. I haven't got a crystal ball. However, all armies camouflage their vehicles the same. Any of you guys who've been in the forces know that you spend a lot of time with your paintbrush, as I did. Now, with camouflage colours, what you do is you break up the shape of the vehicle. So on the side that we could see, and we tried to follow it as best as we could. We want to disrupt the shape, so they knock off the corners and anything that's square. So they tend to put black on edges to knock out shape, to remove the square shapes. So all I've done is sort of mirrored that on the other side. That's all there was to it. Bit of touch up to do. Let's have a look. I have made a little bit of an error, to be honest, as well. When I match this up, it doesn't really quite match. I've forgotten about the black stripe. Basically, the launcher isn't in conjunction with the black stripe of the body of the chassis. I can live with it. I can live with it, to be honest. I tried to just follow the references as best I could. Anyways, I think I've got the impression of the vehicle as it is. Now, there's obviously a bit more to do, a lot of boring stuff to do as well. And with these videos keep on going on and on. So what I'm doing, I'm going to paint the road wheels. I'm going to explain what I'm going to do. We're going for worn road wheels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray NATO black on all the rubber portions. Then I'm going to come back and I have to reapply these camouflage colours all over again, and I'll show you what it looks like. But there's no point you guys seeing all that. Pretty straightforward. So I'll get on with that and show you what this thing looks like. Okay, fortunately that's most of the base painting done, okay? Yeah, I'm kind of happy with the way it's looking at the moment. Road wheels, half green, half brown. Yeah, I've added in those. I found out the plastic parts are really the best representation of those cable links. So those are being airbrushed, but I'm going to need to hand paint them a little bit to touch them up a little bit. But that's basically done. In terms of the idlers and the drive sprockets, these are going to need a little bit of special treatment before they get painted in the correct color as per references. What else is there to do now? I think we need to get on with the missile, so let's just crack on with that, get the base painting done on that part as well. Okay, final subassembly for painting, Krug-a. Okay, the only thing I've added a little bit of detail, pathetic really, but I just noticed that they sort of seem to have a loose sort of strap around the top of that protective part there. Added that on with some lead wire. Okay, preparation was drilling out all these boosters and mounting them on cocktail sticks. Just gonna be easier to handle. I used the big air gun because I just want to get this done quickly. Let's have a look at what the painting description says, but remember we're following references, so we don't need to worry too much about them. It calls out a color of grey throughout the body of the rocket, and there's a silver band. They call out what do they call it? 305, H305 here. Medium gunship grey, XF58 Tamaya. We're not going to even use that. We're just going to use this dark sea grey, just because we've got a huge pot of it. Then we'll go back in with some white into a mixture, and we'll start pre-weathering by adding some shading and contrast on them. Remember that the depiction here is that these aren't operational missiles. These are in a museum. They look like crap, you know, they've been exposed to the elements and they need to be suitably weathered. So let's get all that done now. Yeah, let's crack on. Okay, I've just made up a lighter mix of that grey just by adding a bit of white into it. This, I quite like the tone here, it looks pretty good, but obviously we'll start the pre-weathering by just using the same, we're using the air gun again, but I'm just going to try and lighten in some sort of areas to give it that faded look. That's what I'm seeing in my references. The only thing, I don't need to do this band down here because we know that's going to be metallic. We'll do that a little bit later on. Okay, shading's done. It's kind of subtle, which is exactly the way it should be. Sort of showing a bit of that fading now. Got a little bit more painting to do. We need to do that silver band. We need to mask that off. I'll explain all that pretty soon. Okay, so we've masked off the rockets. Not that big a job. There's a couple of ways to paint these. This seemed to be about the easiest way, and I wanted to get the silver band in there. I'm going to try out this Vallejo metal colour. I've heard that these acrylics are quite good. I would usually, my metallic of choice is actually the Alclads. Absolutely love them, but let's try this acrylic one. I heard these acrylic ones are really great. If you can, try and have a dedicated airbrush for acrylics. I use this sort of cheapy, it's a Sparmax one that came with the compressor. It's just what I'm just dedicated this one to use on metallics. So reading the instructions, it says a primer. Well, the primer is basically, we've got grey paint down. It didn't say anything about thinning, so I've shaken this up. Let's just see how this stuff works and give this a blast. Okay, first of all, a bit of a test spray. It's okay, let's go for it. Oh, also, Happy New Year. You can hear the fireworks in the background there. Seems to spray quite well. Pigment certainly looks fine. I mean, as in fine, as in very fine pigment, as in small granules. It's gone a bit thick there, I don't know why. It's just started to go thick. It's gone thick again. If that happens, just leave it, just walk away from it. Let's try again. Looking pretty good. Yeah, I'm getting a bit of blockage inside this airbrush. It can only be me not cleaning it. I've got overspray already on this. I'm not worried about it too much. I think the weathering is going to take care of a lot of it. Actually, I'll assess it. We'll check it out later on. But I like the texture looks good. The colour looks excellent. If you can call silver a colour. Need to see how this dries off here. We've got some problem areas already. Just trying to get air on there to try and dry it off. Just working quickly. Yeah, it looks good. Really nice metallic. There's way too much overspray in this one. I'm going to have to go back in with the grey. Just one of those things. It's my problem. Okay, started the unmasking process. Obviously I went back with the grey. Hit most of the overspray areas. Wasn't too bad. Let's see how this has worked out. Unmasking, I think, is just as tedious as a masking, but in a model, unless you do some bit of masking, huh? Let's get all this off. See how it, if it's clean or otherwise. I used a combination of kabuki tape and painter's tape for the masking. Okay, let's get this final band off here. Last section. There it is. Not too bad. There's a bit of detail painting to go on here, and also I painted off the end caps as well in red. There was different colours. Red looked the most interesting, of course. This is dry in 5 minutes, and it actually is. It looks really good. I want to try this acrylic. Now the next thing I need to do is really get on with decaling. Let's get everything together and round off this video. How about that? Okay, well that was a lot of base painting work actually. There's just so many sub-assemblies that we covered. Obviously we did the chassis of the vehicle and the launcher in the camouflage colours as per references. I better just, I'll round off something on that. I chose that sand colour, and okay, it probably is off the mark by quite a long way, to be honest. It should be a linoleum brown, really. Did some discussions with friends, and we're at the conclusion that basically it's something similar to modern Polish NATO scheme, which would be like a very dark brown. However, in terms of references, we're looking at a sort of faded, deteriorated vehicle, so in that way the colours are in tune. But may as well be honest with you, that's the facts of the matter, that the colour is not exactly accurate as per references. I was struggling because of the way that the depiction of the HDR photo was presenting that brown. However, I like these colours. It's a pretty cool camo scheme. Looks interesting. We've got a mixture of road wheel colours as well as per the references. In that HDR photo, some of them looked even orange, but we didn't go that far. Okay, we've still got quite a lot of work to do. I'll mock this thing up and show you how it looks like. I'm interested myself, and then we can finally wrap up. Okay, here's the mock-up. This is basically what we're looking at. I think it looks pretty cool actually. I like the combination of the camo and the rockets. Looks pretty interesting, looks pretty cool, nice combo. Still a lot of work to do obviously, but I think it's heading in the right direction generally. Yeah, I'm thinking now what to cover in the next video. There's so much tedious stuff to do, including a lot of decals and stuff for the rockets and rocket assembly. Kind of tedious, boring stuff. I'm thinking about leaping a few steps ahead and showing you how that goes together. Obviously I'm going to do a separate video on the tracks entirely, but yeah, let's wrap this one up. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of this video, be it on airbrush techniques. Of course, feel free to ask any questions. And see you in the next one, and Happy New Year, guys.